So there's a lot of people out there telling you in order to play leads, you've got to learn all these patterns and scales up and down the neck. And no offense, but I've got life and work and kids, and I just don't have time to memorize all this stuff, but I still want to be able to play up and down the neck. So I'm going to show you how to do this in every single key with just 2 patterns. So let's dive in. All right, so to start with, in order to play lead that sounds good, you need to really focus around your root notes. Now, I'm not going to memorize, nor do I suggest that you memorize every single note up and down the fretboard. That would be really daunting to do. So I'm going to show you sort of an easier way to just think your way around the guitar neck. But what I mean by making your solo sound better is if you play around your root note. So let's just say I come here to A, and I know my root note, my A note, is right here on the 2nd fret of the G string. So, G, G sharp, A. That's where we get this A chord from, is around this A note. And if I play solos around this A note, sort of, I don't necessarily have to start on them or necessarily end on them, but if I kind of build licks around this A note with this A note in mind, they end up, kind of sounding better. So it's a good idea to sort of know where your notes are on the fretboard, but like I said, memorizing every single note on every single string, that seems like a ridiculous task for most of us. So I'm going to show you an easy way to do this. And when I first started, I learned all of my notes on my E string, and you might know them, and if you know them on your E string, that's fine. You're a step ahead. But after 30 years of playing, I don't think the E note is the easiest one to remember. To me, I think probably the G note is. So open G on your G string, and then we know where our A note is because it's where we would play our A chord. From there, we can just follow the dots. So I know where my A note is. I come up here to the dot on the 5th fret. That's a C. The next dot is a D. The next dot is an E. And then I know on my 12th fret we start back over, so this has to be a G note. So anything on the 12th fret is just like playing it open. So I had a G, I have an A on my 2nd fret, and then I have C, D, and E on the dots. So I'm not necessarily thinking notes when I'm having to play live. I'm thinking dots and patterns. It's just easier for my brain. If it's easier for you to think in the notes, that's fine. Whatever works for you. But I know this first dot is C, then D, and then E. From there I can find any note that I want. So if you want a B is 1 fret this way from a C. So I knew where my C note was. I know that this one on the 4th fret, that's got to be my B note. Or if I wanted to play an F, I know F is 1 fret this way from my E note, so I know my E is here. That means my F has to be here on the 10th fret of the G string. So from just kind of memorizing this G string, I got, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If you want to play in like a flat or a sharp, you just move it this way 1 to be a flat, move it this way 1 to be a sharp. So you can already find every note on the G string just from these dots. So I actually think that learning them on the G string is probably the easiest just because you get to follow the dots. So you might be asking, Dave, even if I memorize or I can find any note on the G string, what exactly is it that you want me to do with it? And there's really 2 things I want you to keep in mind about this note. Anywhere you find that note, if you lay your finger flat, you're playing that chord. So obviously, if we lay our finger flat here on the 2nd fret, we get an A chord. But this works anywhere. So remember this dot here on the 5th fret was where I find my C note. And if I lay my finger flat right there, now I'm just really playing the ones that I'm holding down, so just these middle 3 strings. But that now makes a C chord. So anywhere you find that note on the G string, just lay your finger flat, and now you're playing that chord. So that makes it really easy to find these movable chords around, because wherever you find that note on the G string, just lay your finger flat and now you're playing that chord. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is that there's a really easy pattern built around this A chord shape. So if I play this pattern right here, I get the major pentatonic pattern. So this would be my A major pentatonic pattern around this A shape. And if I wanted to play, say, my C major pentatonic, I would just move it up here. But the other thing I want you to keep in mind about this pattern is, in this pattern, we can find our other root notes. Because remember, solos sound better if we kind of build them around our root notes. So we know where our root note is on our G string, but now this top note here in our pattern, the one I've put in red, that is our root note, and anything that happens on one E string also happens on the other. So this 5th fret on the E string is my A note. This 5th fret on the other E string is also my A note. So now I know where my A notes are, and I know what that note that I can start building a solo around, or start building phrases and guitar licks. So in this pattern, you can play any of these notes. They'll always sound good as long as you're playing in that key. So in this case, I'm playing in the key of A. Any of these notes will always sound good, and you'll never make a mistake, which is the great thing about any of the pentatonic boxes. But remember, just kind of build them around the root note. So any kind of lick that you know inside of one of these pentatonic boxes, you can now move to any key that you want. So how do we do that? I take this same pattern that I can play here around this A shape, and remember, I can make this A shape anywhere. So if I wanted to say play in the key of D, I go find that D note on my G string. So here on the 5th fret was a C, the next dot up was a D. I lay my finger flat, and now I'm playing in the key of D. So any lick that I know inside of this major pentatonic box, I can now move anywhere up and down the fretboard and play in any key. I just use the same pattern and I just move it around, and now I can play in any key. Now, I don't want you exclusively playing in the major pentatonic scale, and you're not going to want to stay there. And that doesn't allow you freedom to move around the neck and kind of play what you want. But from this major pentatonic scale, you can now find the other patterns pretty easily. So remember, we're looking for our root notes because that's what we're wanting to build our solos around. And I was playing this pattern, and my root note was here on the 5th fret of the E string. So this was the high part of that pattern I was playing. Well, if I shift up to where my pointer finger is now on that root note, I can play the same exact pattern I was playing earlier, and now I get the minor pentatonic scale. So I had major pentatonic scale, this root note, I shifted up, and now I get my minor pentatonic scale. It's the same exact pattern as the major, only now we get that more typical blues or rock sound. And this is also the position where you would play your bar chords. So if you know where your bar chords are around the neck, then you're already one step ahead of the game, in that that is where you would play this minor pentatonic shape. But if you're not familiar where your root notes are, where you would play your bar chord, you can also play this F shape. It's the same chord, I'm just not holding all the way across. I'm just playing this F shape, and now I can easily find my root notes, because obviously one of my root notes was here on the E string, and where my ring finger is holding in an F chord, that's my other root note. So now I can sort of build some licks around that root note. Now, once you know your major pentatonic and your minor pentatonic, there's another really easy pattern that sort of mixes these two together in the next position up. So remember, I was playing my minor pentatonic shape, and this note that I was playing here on the B string, this top note here, if I shift that 2 frets up, that is my other root note that I've been looking for. So I had a root note here, have a root note here, and then I can shift up 2 frets from that top part of my scale on the B string, and I can find my next root note. And this is the same place where you can make a D chord shape. So if you can make a D chord shape there, this will end up being your root note, what your ring finger is holding in a D chord. So in A, I had my major pentatonic scale. This top root note here, I can shift up, I can play the same pattern, I can get my minor pentatonic. And then this top note here on the B string of that pattern, I can slide up 2 frets, and now I can get my D chord shape. And if I shift up where my pointer finger is there on that root note, then I can play this pattern. And that is my B.B. King box. And the neat thing about the B.B. King box is instead of just being major or just being minor, the B.B. King box mixes major and minor together. So you can get that minor sound, but you can also get the major sound. Or you can play and mix those two together. So we've got a place where we can play major, we can shift up, and we got a place where we can play minor. We can shift up again, and now we've got our B.B. King box where we can play both major and minor. After that, on the 12th fret, remember the guitar starts back over note-wise. So we were here playing around this A note if we're in the key of A. Well, I happen to know that on the 12th fret it starts over, so 2 frets up is my A note again, and that's where I can play my major pentatonic. So let's do this in a different key. Let's do this, say, in the key of E. I need to find my root note on my G string, so I know that on this dot I get a C note, this dot I get a D note, and then on this dot I get an E note. So all I have to do is lay my finger flat, and that makes an E chord, and I can play this pentatonic pattern, and I get my major pentatonic scale. So if I want to play, and get that sound, I can stay right here, but I can also find my root note on my E string, which was the top part of that scale. I can shift up, and I can get my minor pentatonic pattern. Now remember, on the 12th fret, the guitar starts back over. So anything you can do on the 12th fret, you can go and you can do open. So I could play my E minor pentatonic scale up here on the 12th fret, but I can also come down here and play it open. So this pattern is also my E minor pentatonic. And from here, remember, I find my note on my B string by sliding up 2 frets. That's where I could make this D shape, which also makes an E chord. And from here, that root note shift up to where my pointer finger is on it. And now I can play my B.B. King box, mixing the major and minor together. And from there, I'm just right here from going back to this E major pentatonic. So that's an easy way to sort of think your way all the way around the guitar and kind of be able to play anywhere in just these 2 shapes. And this works, like I said, in any key. So let's do this in like some really strange key. Let's say somebody wants to play in D flat. Now, why someone would want to play in D flat, I don't know, but you don't have to worry, because you can still play lead guitar in D flat because you know this easy patterns around the guitar. So all you need to do is you need to find where you would make a D chord. So you need to find your D note. Remember, this dot was C, this dot was D, and in order to make something flat, you just move it this way, 1 fret. So if this was a D, that means moving it down 1 fret. That now makes a D flat chord. And from here, I can play this pattern, and I'm playing in D flat. If I want to play in the minor pentatonic, I find this top note of that pattern, shift up, and now now I'm playing in D flat minor pentatonic. I can shift up again and play my B.B. King box there. So as you can see, just knowing these simple patterns, how to find your root notes and how to sort of move your way from one to the other will allow you to play in any key, you know, even some strange key like D flat. You don't have to worry because you're just playing, you know, these patterns. Find your root note. And now you can move around and you can play in any key up and down the guitar neck. So I really do hope this helps. I hope this sort of unlocks it for you. And obviously after you've learned, you know, these patterns up and down, there are other patterns to learn so that you can, you know, play the minor pentatonic in different places, or your B.B. King box or your major pentatonic in different places. But this is an excellent starting point to get you playing around the neck in any key. So like I said, I hope this helps. And if you need something, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you.